so for track, I decided to do photography because I got a DSLR for Christmas, and it is just a lifelong skill that will come in handy. Slide. So my driving question initially started off as how can I improve my photography, though that was way too shallow. I decided to narrow it down to about 3 things do I need to do and practice in order to improve my photography. So, and upon asking the 3 things, I found that you need to be artistic with the way you take photos, and you need to know how to use your camera technologically, and you need to be creative. Slide. So for the technological part, there are 3 things that control exposure, which is kind of what I want to focus on this try time. So aperture is pretty much a light filter, except the lower the aperture, the smaller the hole gets, and the smaller the hole, the wider the depth of view is. As you can see in this photo, this has a high aperture and this has a low aperture. Slide. And the shutter speed is another thing that controls exposure, because it is how long the shutter is open before it closes again and it processes the image. So this has a high shutter speed, which means that everything is blurred, and this has a high shutter speed because you can see it's like frozen in time. So it was just fast enough to catch that little fraction of a second.
Good examples.
Yeah. And so then ISO also is another thing that controls the exposure. It's the sensitivity of the light sensor. And the higher the ISO, the brighter the image, but the higher the noise is, which is like, if you look into this, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of like static almost. And so I found a good example from my mom, who I interviewed, who took a photography lesson from a professional photographer, and the photographer said that the cup always needs to be full. So you always need the right amount of light in the cup. So if you were going to lower the ISO, you need to raise the shutter speed or the aperture, or vice versa, to keep the light at the same level. Slide. So I missed the slide. I don't know where it went. I might have deleted it, but as I researched, I found the Kodak website had some really good photography tips, and said that you need to visualize the image before you take it how you want it to turn out, and then you experiment in trying to find that perfect photo, and then learn from what you did, so it'll take less tries the next time. And that so what I learned throughout this try time was that I learned the basic exposure control. The tricks for taking photos, like that if you want to create a frame, if you can. So like if you were standing on the inside of a cave and you wanted to take a photo looking out of the cave, you use the cave as like a frame for the image. And when to use and not use, like flash, for example. Like you would use flash in that day in order to bring out an object that looks silhouetted by light pollution behind it. So how I know I achieved my goal is I went and took photos. Slide. So I took some decent photos, but this only took like one try to get the right exposure for the, slide. And so this one, I took a photo of one of the flowers looking up at the sun in a way that it, I tried to make it silhouetted, right? Like to make, but it didn't quite work. And this was kind of a cool one because I saw the dew in the plants. It would have been cool to capture. And it's like, though it did take a couple tries to get the right exposure level. Like this one is overexposed, there's too much light. This one is underexposed, it has too little light. It's like, I eventually figured out how to get the right exposure. Thank you.
Questions for Alex? So now that you've learned about ISO, aperture, shutter speed, when do you think, or what examples in the future are you going to take automatic off your DSLR and start actually using your own knowledge, do you think?
Well, so sunsets are kind of hard to capture all the incredible lights caused by the setting sun and stuff, so you might want to experiment with having a higher shutter speed, right, to, like, I don't know, I'm going to have to experiment a little more to capture the vibrance of certain scenes.
Yeah, but that's a great example, sunrise and sunset, because some things in the foreground are going to be really dark, whereas the sun is going to be really bright, and there's no in between. So you're battling between part of your environment being low light, and then the most of your subject, which is probably the sun in the sky or the sun coming over the mountains, is going to be too intense. So really good example. Well done, Alex.
Thank you.